Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard from LastCar.info, just coming at you after the conclusion of the FireKeepers Casino 400 at Michigan, won by unofficially Ryan Blaney in a rather crazy finish after kind of up and down race in general. Got plenty to talk about from this weekend, and we'll certainly get into that. Hopefully, we get a few more people in here before we'll get into the conversation. In the meantime, while people are filing in, let me know what you guys thought about this race in general. Definitely seen some kind of mixed reviews already between, I think it's the age-old debate so far between what makes a good race versus what makes a good finish. And either one can make for good television if done right. But definitely kind of one thing to look at right off the bat. All righty. Welcome aboard, folks. We'll get started here in just a sec here for people jumping in. I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to come on by because we had a lot of people here last week, and so hopefully we get some returning people here this time around to check out some of these shows live. Just posted the link on Twitter here, so we'll get going here. All right. So, again, a little bit of everything already in this race. We'll go ahead and get started here. Ryan Blaney, your winner unofficially over a close contest over William Byron, just about a car link there at the finish. As I said on Twitter, I thought that Rick Allen was calling the finish of this race a little bit too soon. Byron probably wasn't going to get around Blaney, but at the same time there, he was having a pretty good battle to the finish. Just kind of goes to show one difference in the calls. I thought it was very interesting that in the lead up to this race, they played a lot of great old clips from Michigan over the years, which used to be more commonplace than it is now. But among those, of course, the famous Bob Jenkins call between Dale Jarrett and Davey Allison en route to Jarrett's first win. No first-time winners this time around, although Matt Benedetto tried very hard to get up there. Showing him a lot more aggression that we've seen out of him in most races, especially, really outside the super speedways. We saw a lot of this at Talladega earlier this year when he ultimately came up short against Brad Keselowski. But in this race here, a couple times bumping people out of the way, especially trading some bumps with Denny Hamlin. Hamlin ultimately getting back around him before the finish. And Benedetto with a sixth-place finish. Good run ordinarily, but still in a must-win situation, as with everybody outside the top 16 coming into next week. Although Austin Dillon's advantage over Tyler Reddick narrowed a little bit, closer than it would have been ordinarily. Reddick seemed to be on his way to a top 15 or possibly a top 10 finish. Coming down the back straightaway in the final laps, he and Daniel Suarez appeared to come together on the back straightaway. Reddick bounced off of him there, spun out, did not bring out a caution as he spun out in the apron, and ended up 3 laps down, I believe, in the 29th spot at the finish. So combined with Dillon's 36th place finish, not a good day for Richard Childress's team. And the two teammates are going to basically wage war for this last spot, potentially at Daytona. Is there a scenario where Dillon can point his way in? Possibly, especially with super speedways being what they are. But it's definitely on the outer realm of possible still at this point. Dillon pretty much in the same must-win scenario here as, again, a lot of the other competitors behind him, many of which are actually happen to be pretty good at super speedways. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Matt Benedetto certainly leading that group, and Chris Buescher in the middle of that pack as well in the number 17. Although one of the best runs we've seen out of Buescher was back at Homestead back in the spring. He's also been no slouch at the super speedways. So, and then that's just assuming that we don't have anybody completely off out of depth here, like a Ryan Preece or somebody else pulling off the win this time next Saturday. So clip this one clip that moment there in case we end up having the 37 in victory lane this coming Saturday. Great news for Eric Jones being able to stay in the 43 next year. But it's going to be really interesting. And again, the ongoing battle between, speaking of Trackhouse and the incident they had with Reddick at the end of this race, the ongoing battle between Trackhouse and 2311 Racing, and really to that extent, Live Fast Motorsports, continues on into the last race of the regular season. None of those teams have won yet this year. We've seen some flashes of brilliance out of, especially the 2311 and Trackhouse this year. And is one of them going to be able to break through? We saw Bubba Wallace competing for the win in this race last year, had an incident battling for the lead there. I believe Denny Hamlin got in the middle of that and knocked him further back into the lineup back when he was driving the 43 car. Suarez, we didn't really get a chance to see what he could do back at Daytona back in February, although he had a very good run in the duels, as did Wallace. Can one of them pull off the win and get one of those teams in there? But we now know after today that both of them will not make it in there. It's going to be a matter at most of one of these teams making the playoffs. So somebody's going to be a little bit disappointed. Whether it's going to be the 20, again, the Wallace team or the Suarez team, yet another storyline that's going to converge next week. And this kind of fits in with the title of the stream here today. Obviously, this being a Michigan race before a more anticipated event in the playoff cutoff, it was kind of marketed that way during much of the race today. They couldn't contain themselves talking about what's going to happen at Daytona next week. But this race did actually set up many of the storylines here. Would be remiss before we go further into the Austin Dillon situation there with Keselowski. Again, as I tweeted there during the race itself, I would say the first reaction I had to that was exactly the 1992 Winston. I think it was Kyle Petty who gave a interview about this years later, that when he and Davey Allison were coming across the stripe, and of course in a quad oval, different time period, but coming to the checkered flag, similar scenario where the race is about to be stopped, or in this case a end of a stage. In this case today, a couple drivers they tense up and then they loosen up a little bit, and maybe the car kind of goes this way or that way. Just an unfortunate situation. Dillon's, according to Arca Start and Park Cars on Twitter, sounded like Dillon was more critical of himself at that moment there, that he crossed the nose of Keselowski, had that very serious accident. Keselowski sounded very vocal about himself on the radio and didn't mean for that to happen there. Again, it does seem to fit, I think, in my mind, more in the category of just, a racing deal. These guys are competing for points here. You got a situation where Dillon, of course, is trying to get into the playoffs, has easily the best car he's had all year, certainly since Daytona, when he had that charge down the back straightaway that stalled out before the wreck that happened in turn 3. It looked like he had an outside shot at actually inheriting the lead. But this is certainly one of the best runs we've seen out of him. He's been kind of hot and cold at Michigan lately, but every once in a while gets some good runs out there. And today was certainly no exception. Through the first two stages, it looked like he was really going to have something for him in the final stage. Unfortunately, ends up with nothing much more to show for it than a next to last place finish, but some valuable stage points that, again, keep it closer than it ordinarily could have been racing his teammate Tyler Reddick. So the battle of the Childress teammates is going to continue on into next week, and we'll find out what happens from there. But unfortunate for Dillon. Again, it looked like they had, incidentally, a pretty neat paint scheme, actually. Again, kind of gave me Harry Gant vibes from the particular color scheme there. But just unfortunate there. We haven't, he's had a consistent season, much like he did last year, and just knocking on the door, trying to get through. And as with the new development teams from this year, only one of those Childress teams is going to make the cut now. I mean, the scenario is now that Harvick should be locked in, I would think, because he's now more than 9,400 points or something like that outside of it. So not outside the realm of that. Obviously, post-race technical inspection still ongoing, which could always throw a wrench in a lot of things. But yeah, the possibility that only one of those development teams is going to get into the playoffs, or potentially only one of the Childress teams, but not both. It's going to be interesting next week, and I think we got a lot to kind of look forward to on that next Saturday, weather, of course, permitting. Alrighty. Thank you for the super chat there, Beast of Metal. Unofficially, Ryan Blaney in a rather crazy finish, in quotes. There, I fixed the intro for you. I guess this means bigger horsepower number is better, unless you subscribe to the Only Spoiler Matters camp. Well, I mean, again, I definitely noticed from the start of this race that it seemed like the cars were being held back. You could definitely tell, like, the large amount of drag, the lower horsepower in the cars there. Michigan used to traditionally be a race where, it's just blazing fast speeds, and you could, go 3 wide and 4 wide. And you certainly saw some of that today, but it seemed like more like the cars were kind of had an invisible barrier in front of them, and they couldn't kind of get up there and compete a bit more like a traditional Michigan race. And now a lot of those Michigan races did have the field strung out by quite a bit, which is why you have a lot of races that have fuel mileage, a lot of strategy that's come into play, even with the stage racing being what it is. A lot of mentions were made earlier this week of the race, and I think it was 2009, where Jimmy Johnson and Greg Biffle both ran out of gas in the last couple laps, and Mark Martin pulled off the victory driving for Hendrick. It definitely is not as conducive to see this particular package and have it not be as competitive as it was. Now, at the end of the race here, it did keep the field close enough that you would have groups of maybe 3 or 4 drivers up there. But much like we saw in super speedway racing back in about 2003, 2004, thereabouts, you would have these great, really impressive looking packs, but nobody could actually get up there and take the pass for the lead. So you can make a great pass for second or something like that. And we know we saw plenty of that today. But actually getting a pass for the lead, well, shoot, once Ryan Blaney got a good restart, that was pretty much the end of it there. We're not too different from where we were at Homestead last year or a couple of years ago, where Kyle Busch or Martin Truex Jr. Were kind of held back, further behind somebody else that was actually blowing their doors off there at the finish. So you kind of take the good with the bad. I know that at this point it's academic because they're going to bring in this new car and hopefully it's going to produce some more competitive racing without seeming to be too restrained. Although, again, who knows what that's going to look like, much less sound like. I know there was a clip posted earlier this week of Eric Jones's car having or was it Eric Jones or Christopher Bell? But somebody was running at the races at Bristol. I think it was Bell, where you could hear the exhaust notes sounding very different with the new arrangement and everything, and especially within the cacophony of the Bristol Coliseum there, basically. It's going to be interesting to see how that kind of sounds. But in terms of the racing on the bigger tracks, I think that's going to be the real ultimate test. And we're going to find out about that pretty early on next year when it sounds like we're going to have Fontana at the end of February, at least unofficially. We don't have the full schedule set yet. Vegas and those other venues sound like the West Coast swing is still going to be kind of there at the beginning of the season. Any other rumors as to what the schedule is going to be? I don't have any new information on that. But it sounds like the next gen car on these larger tracks is, we're going to get tests on that pretty early on. And that is one race we're looking to cover next year is going to be Fontana in the spring, which so far is at least still going to be the last race on the 2 mile oval if they do go forward with their own next gen version of their own track. So that's going to be another thing coming up. So yeah, again, the cars, it was really hard to tell from one moment to the next. Certainly I'm glad the rain held off enough that you actually got to finish the race properly. Cause it did have a decent finish. I mean, again, the NASCAR posted the Michigan race earlier this week, which incidentally actually includes a great tribute to JD McDuffie in it that Benny Parsons narrated. That got posted earlier this week. And if you watch that one too, it's not a particularly exciting race. The field's really strung out. And it just happened to have a finish that's so memorable that it just kind of completely blocks out everything that happened. In researching Derek Cope's biography here, I rewatched the 1990 Daytona 500, and you can actually hear broadcasters in the background saying, wow, this is kind of a boring race as Dale Earnhardt waxed the field there. But ultimately, that doesn't get remembered because, of course, what happened on the final lap in the final corner. So that's nothing really new in the sport. I think what's new, of course, is the aero package creating a scenario where you are artificially restraining the cars at non-super speedway tracks, trying to create closer racing when what you're doing is you're also making it virtually impossible to pass somebody for the lead. And, you saw how long Austin Dillon, before he had his wreck, how long he was racing Kyle Larson side by side and just couldn't clear him. The kind of stuff you usually only see at like Richmond in the short track there. It's a very different kind of racing, a very different kind of competition. What we're going to see next year, I don't know, but so far right now, I think in the meantime, we got some interesting storylines next week. But probably glad that, this is the only Michigan race we've had this year, right? Because the June race got moved to, what was it? Was that the one that went to Coda or something? I know that they've moved it around because last year we had a doubleheader at Michigan. That was where Brad Keselowski got his first last place finish. On that note, I definitely have to jump into this too. Last place finish for Joey Gase today. Glad that he's okay. He tweeted a little bit later in the race that he was okay after that accident. Of course, we saw him get out of the car. Gase with a very hard hit off of turn 2. And of course, Michigan is no joke when it comes to that. You think of Ernie Irvin's serious accident in 1994. You think of one of the many accidents that Dale Earnhardt Jr. himself had suffered a concussion at this same track here, and and so forth through it. So it could be a very treacherous track in many ways. I think, and certainly seeing Austin Dillon's wreck today, as serious as that was, really points to the safety advancements and everything to try to kind of offset that, certainly. But Joey Gase with a very hard hit at the beginning of it. Surprising that he was in the car at the last second there. I didn't see his tweet back on Thursday when I was finishing the entry list storylines that he was in for James Davison. But kudos to him. He's going to basically be in every race in at least one of Rick Ware's cars for all but 2 races, as Bob Pockers tweeted earlier today. Those accepting being the Bristol Night Race and the Charlotte Roval. I would assume James Davison's in both of those, but I don't know how that works out because, of course, there's 4 cars at Rick Ware's team, and they're constantly changing driver lineups. Gase pretty much uncontested for the last place spot after he was classified last at the start of the race there, was the first one to lose a lap. His teammate Garrett Smithley lost a lap before the competition caution. So Smithley got the lap back, and on the restart, that's when Gase had his incident. Something happened in the right front of the car, perhaps a tire, not sure exactly. But whatever it was, it happened quick enough that he hit the wall pretty hard, and hopefully things are okay there from Gase. Certainly seems to be the case from what he posted on Twitter here. So pending post-race inspection, it'll be a Joey Gase feature later tonight in the number 15 car. But also, again, it looks like Gase with one side note, and I'll mention this in the article too. It looks like he was actually working with another organization that's interested in raising awareness about brain aneurysms. Obviously, he's been very outspoken in his support of organ donation and other health-related fields there. So, again, you never know with these last place finishes or anything like that, or sometimes it gets more attention for the brand than just a mid-pack finish where they're not shown on TV at all. But still, at the same time, quite a hard hit that he had there. So hopefully for better things going forward from there. Austin Dillon in the 36th spot is mentioned after his accident there with Keselowski. Ross Chastain and Anthony Alfredo, both of them spinning extended stays behind the wall. Very confused about what exactly was going on there. They said something about a fire in the rear end of Ross Chastain's car. Took more than, I believe, about 40 laps before he actually got back out there. Ultimately did climb past Austin Dillon, but not past Alfredo, who also had an issue in the left rear of his car. Didn't get the specifics on that, but Alfredo returned to the track before Chastain, and Alfredo ultimately ranked ahead of Chastain there. Joey Logano, after being involved in that incident at the end there, I thought he did a fantastic job of avoiding Reddick after he made that crazy bonsai move into turn 3, but unfortunately got some contact from Truex and spun him out. Seemed like it was going to be a relatively minor incident for Logano, but something must have happened with the right front tie rod or something, because the wheel was just jammed there from that point, and ultimately couldn't get back out there, and rounds out the bottom 5 unofficially with Garrett Smithley and Josh Bilicki just on the outside looking in the bottom 5 there as well. So different scenario there, but interesting to see which competitors were able to kind of stay in it and which ones weren't. Again, with a race like this where you have such low attrition, it's very easy for somebody to completely drop to the back of the field. And certainly with both Logano and Tyler Reddick in this particular case, well, and Austin Dillon, what turned out to be a very bad day turned out to be much worse in this standings. I'll be very interested when the final standings come up there and see how many stage points and everything worked out with Dillon and Reddick, to see where that all kind of shook out. Logano, really, for that matter, too. But that'll be something kind of look at. Let's see. Wyatt O'Quinn, I see your question there about which Childress car would have a better chance getting in there. Probably Dillon. Reddick is really impressive. He makes some really crazy moves. He seems to be a little bit more aggressive than Dillon, which I think is probably surprising to some. But I think Dillon, as you mentioned here, he has a bit more experience in the playoffs, seems to get a better run at it. I think between the two of them, Dillon is certainly better at Daytona, given, of course, his 500 win, even though it was under the circumstances of basically wrecking Eric Almirola to do so. But, again, still has the victory. And Reddick last year, when he was in a must-win situation, ended up jumping into the front of a line on the outside groove and ultimately took himself out of the race. Now he finds himself in a situation where he has the spot and doesn't necessarily need to do something like that, but is now at the behest where he perhaps doesn't entirely control his own destiny, if Dillon actually does pull off the victory again. And, again, from his great run in the 500 and his car remaining in one piece, which very few people from the 500 can say, that's going to be something to actually see under the lights there. Let's see. I see your question there. No tires, just gas. This is not the first last place finish for Joey Gase. Far from it. This is actually his 8th last place finish in the Cup Series, and with the 7th consecutive different car number. His first 2 were for Archie St. Hilaire in the 32, and he has now finished last in 7 consecutive different car numbers. Multiple numbers at Rick Ware Racing, the Motorsports Business Management, and then multiple numbers over at BK Racing before that. The full list is actually, I tweeted it out a little while ago there, and I'll put that in the article later tonight if it does turn out that Gase is your official last place finisher there. So, of course, no stranger to the website there, but unfortunate deal there for him and the Rick Ware Racing Group. Let's see. And so forth. We'll talk about the Xfinity and the Truck Series races as well. We'll jump on to that. Let me make sure we got everything else here from the results here. Josh Berry, we didn't see much out of him besides being involved in that incident late in the race there. Last minute relief driver duty, finishing in the 26th spot there for Spire Motorsports. Kudos to him for getting a few starts. We saw him in our Spire car earlier this year at Dover, where Justin Haley was under COVID regulations. Corey LaJoie apparently under the same circumstances. So hopefully seeing LaJoie come back next week. And actually LaJoie would be another one to kind of watch at Daytona too, if you want a complete outsider. A driver that had very fast speeds in qualifying and practice. Ultimately, I think he was still in the top 10 or top 15, the 500, if I remember correctly. But maybe one to watch to kind of be the survival of the fastest out there, maybe get a good finish out of there. Obviously, Spire being a past Daytona winner with Haley himself under the lightning delayed race a couple of years ago. Kevin Harvick, we didn't really see much out of him today. Traditionally seems to be very good at Michigan, but not so much today, finishing in the 14th spot. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. continuing a streak of kind of solid runs here, 12th in this one. But again, in a must-win situation. Chase Briscoe was in the top 5 for a little bit at the end of this, looking to keep momentum going of that Indianapolis weekend there. Ultimately ends up shaking out back to the 11th spot at the finish. Brad Keselowski, after the incident with Dillon, finishes in 9th. DiBenedetto, we mentioned, in the 6th spot there. Kurt Busch had one of the fastest cars in today's race. Good run for him in the 4th spot there, right behind Kyle Larson, who, of course, has been as dominant as he's been. And isn't it interesting that NASCAR.com earlier today had a thing saying, do not pick William Byron to win at Michigan based on past results. And there he is, almost had a shot to win it, and ultimately finishes second to Ryan Blaney today. So kudos to him for the Homestead winner as we go into the 1-year anniversary of his first Cup win in this same race last August. So that'll be interesting to look at too. Further back, mentioned Eric Jones about the contract extension at Richard Petty's team, finishing in the 18th spot, 1 spot ahead of Bubba Wallace. Wallace with the upside down numbers on the roof of the car. That got quite a bit of attention on social media. News to me too. I don't know what was going on with that. Whether it was a mistake in the decal department or whatever was going on there. Sometimes we've seen drivers have the numbers upside down. Tim Richmond comes to mind. I think he had some races at Riverside where they would have the numbers upside down because more of the timing and scoring was in the infield, or it was easier for the crew or whoever. So not entirely unforeseen in this case. Somebody else was posting pictures of Bill Elliott's 94 car, which was also sponsored by McDonald's with the number upside down. Kind of warrants a discussion of its own. But there are several examples. If you look at some old paint schemes there, that's kind of the case there too. So that was interesting. Michael McDowell in the 20th spot, of course, your Daytona 500 winner coming into the July race or the August race now, looking to potentially join Jimmy Johnson and Bobby Allison and very few others as drivers who have won both the 500 and the 400 in the same year. So that'll be one to look at. Suarez 22nd after the contact with Reddick there at the finish. Cody Ware, got to give a shout out to him. 27th place finish for Cody Ware. May not sound like that impressive, but apparently, again, he had no air conditioning today in a race in August at Michigan with very few cautions in it. Don't know if that air conditioning issue was ever fixed. According to his radio transmission, somebody on the crew knocked the hose loose off the cool box. So, of course, these drivers are strapped in. They can't reach back there and do it. And I guess nobody else could get to it. but finished 27th, one lap down. I didn't hear anything about a driver change or anything, so correct me if I'm wrong on that. But kudos to him on getting a solid finish. He actually finished ahead of people like Tyler Reddick or Joey Logano. So something to be said there. And effectively at the same time ended a last place streak for the number 51 team specifically, where they finished last in the last two races at both Indianapolis and Watkins Glen. Of course, Rick Ware's team now has 3 in a row with the combined finish with Joey Gase, of course, today. The last remnant of Premium Motorsports now since absorbed into the Rick Ware racing effort. Let's see. Yeah. Is it me or there was a number of times the announcers or pit reporters couldn't get words out smoothly? Perhaps. I mean, it kind of felt like that a little bit. It was a little, again, I was still disappointed by just the call to the finish. That they did this exact same thing last year where I think it was Keselowski and Harvick had a race. And I think we talked about it in the same show last year, that they just call the finish before they even get to the line. And you could do that, in some degrees. But, again, there's tracks like, Daytona, Talladega. It's very easy for a lot to happen between turn 4 and get to the finish line. And it's massive at Michigan. Thinking back to going to Fontana, that the sheer amount of space that you have to cover from turn 4 to the actual starting line there is tremendous. It's really hard to grasp it on TV until you see it in person. So I don't know, but again, it seems like it's more of a nitpick than anything else, I would say, on that one. Yeah, they did that at Pocono before Larson's sire went down. Yep, that's right. They had that where they actually did the call. And they're like, oh my goodness, look how good he's been doing all season and this too. But I'm sure we were all thinking it, of course. But then all of a sudden that happened, and it certainly changed the outcome. So we'll go into the Xfinity and the Truck Series race. I saw a question there about the IndyCar race. I just watched the finish of it, so I didn't really follow that much. I know we had the ARCA race earlier today at, what was it, the Springfield Mile? Or I think it's Springfield and then DeCoin afterwards. So we had that. Didn't watch that one there, but our William Saki there is our ARCA correspondent, and he follows that side of it there. So we should have a feature on that later this week. The Xfinity Series and the Truck Series, I posted both of those articles yesterday. And on the Xfinity Series side, your last place finisher, Brandon Brown, the very first of his Xfinity career, and I believe it was 108th career start. Unfortunate situation there. He did a little bit of strategy to try to get up to the front of the field. Ultimately ended up collected in a grinding accident on the back straightaway that involved Bubba Wallace and Daniel Hemrick and several other competitors out there. Wallace actually bounced back and finished in the 10th spot despite pretty significant damage behind the left front wheel. So kudos to him and the Motorsports Business Management and Hattori Racing Enterprises effort there that support the 61 team. Certainly good to see on that effort. Not so much for Brown. We did have a scenario where it looked like it was going to be somebody else in the last spot there at the beginning. Both the Xfinity and the Truck Series had much more competitive battles for last place than the Cup Series turned out to. You had situations where was it here? Yeah, Sam Mayer at the bottom of the field. Where was it? I got to get that pulled up here in the meantime. Austin Cindric. Oh, yeah, we got to talk about the Cindric thing there too, for sure. Cesar Baccarella, Bailey Curry. A lot of people. Bailey Curry, I can't believe they had the same electrical issue they had back at Texas. Talk about the battery melting, actually, when they were trying to get the car to refire there on pit road. The exact same problem they had back there. I don't know what electrical gremlin they've had there, but they've been trying to run that to ground for 2 months now. So hopefully the 74 team can kind of turn things around there. Ultimately didn't finish in the last spot, climbed up to the 34th spot before getting involved in that incident with Jesse Little down the backstretch. Little had a pretty scary incident there on the backstretch, hitting the barrier that Brett Bodine ran into back in 2003. So that was pretty hard hit there. But the Baby Dogecoin car in the last spot there, unfortunate end to that run there. And of course, last place run for Brown. Brown himself getting a lot of notoriety this year with his car salesman video, which I mentioned in the article posted yesterday, and the efforts he's taken there to try to get that family team some more backing. They've certainly been much like RSS Racing before what's been a disastrous season for them. Brandon Built Motorsports has really turned heads in terms of being one of the best outsider teams in the Xfinity Series, really trying to get some good finishes out there. Don't be surprised if they end up being a factor again next week in Daytona for the Friday night spectacular there. So that'll be another one to look at. So hopefully they'll bounce back from that. Have to talk about the Austin Cindric situation there. I know I tweeted the other day that it was absurd that he was out there for, I believe it was 6 or 7 laps with his car smoking after being involved in that incident. Now, again, I'm not against any team out there trying to patch a car back together, much less take the nose off the car. We saw enough of that in the Truck Series race as well back on Friday. But when it gets to the point there where a guy's out there and it's leaking fluid, you kind of bring him back in right away and try to fix that up. But perhaps whether it's the situation with the crash clock or the damaged vehicle policy and what causes the clock to keep going or to stop, I guess there needs to be some clarity on that. But it was absurd for him to be out there as long as he was in that particular set of circumstances there. And then ultimately dropped out of the race and finished in the 37th spot. Did pass Hemrick and Joe Graff Jr. in the process, and Brandon Brown for that matter. Although Brown was still classified, I think Brown and Hemrick were already ranked behind him before that happened. So he didn't really pass those two drivers there. So I didn't really see the point of that. And yeah, I stand by it too. I think if it was another team, if it was Brandon Brown's team, for example, or David Starr or one of these other teams out there that was leaking fluid, NASCAR would have brought the hammer down a lot quicker than that, than they would have with the Penske team. And it's sad but true, I think, in this case. But it was disappointing there. Certainly, I know Cindric himself was disappointed in that, but it was just it was absurd. That really didn't need to happen in that particular case there. Sam Mayer finishing in the 33rd spot. He was one of the other drivers that was behind the wall there with transmission issues, came back out there and actually finished the race under power in the 33rd spot. I know that nowadays the points racing is a little bit harder than it used to be, well, to say the least, especially with stage racing being what it is. Seems like it's a moving target all the time. But it's still good to see a lot of these teams actually try to fight to get their entries back out there. And again, we saw quite a bit of that in both the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series as well. Let's see here. So, yeah, Cesar Baccarella, I'm looking over my notes here again on that. Actually backed into the outside wall. Ryan Vargas, feature on the shirt here today, very nearly involved in that same accident. Apparently had a tire issue there at the same time, luckily saved by Baccarella's caution. Good job by the 90 team to get the car back out there despite pretty significant damage on a high downforce track that you traditionally don't see drivers come back out, especially in situations, again, like Cindric's, where the entire nose of the car is taken off of there. But you had that kind of situation. But between Baccarella and Bailey Curry and ultimately Sam Mayer as well, a lot of different trades for position there before it finally fell to Brandon Brown in the final running order. Have to give a shout out to Jay Buford in the first year for Big Machine Racing or Big Machine Motorsports. Great run out of them, getting a ninth place finish there in the number 48 car. We saw them very nearly get a top 10 back at Phoenix earlier this year, the same race where actually Bailey Curry had his best run of the season there, the number 74. Unfortunately, some mechanical issues or an incident there at the end of the race there dropped him back in the running order. But this time around, a great finish for him. And I believe it's actually not even his career best finish. His best, he did even better last year driving for SS Greenlight Racing, the 07 car when he was running all those road courses last season. So good to see Jay Buford and the team really kind of start to gel, and a great paint scheme out there too. It's good to see that car. The more that car is seen on screen, the more you kind of get those 90s throwback vibes to the different colors they run on those cars there. So good to see there too. Also, Matt Mills was mentioned a lot on Twitter, and I have to certainly mention that because he was in the top 15 pretty much the entire race and ended up finishing in the 14th spot there for him. One of his best runs ever, not really a career best. Unbelievably, he actually has a top 10 finish a while back there, if I remember correctly. But a great run that he's had. The number 5 car there, BJ McLeod Motorsports, has again been one of these teams, much like Johnny Davis's team, where they just actually have some surprising runs and get some good performances in. And hopefully BJ can get, he and Matt Titt can get their cup program there. Obviously, they've been dealing with a lot of things this year, trying to get that program going. They're performing about where we saw the 32 car do last year. I know they've taken on some of their sponsors from last season, but hopefully things can pick up for them. And with the next gen car and everything, they can kind of close the gap a little bit. But runs like you saw on Saturday there are certainly good to see for sure. Got to give a shout out as well to Josh Berry. Touched on him a little bit in the Sunday race there, but the fantastic run that he had on Saturday, pulling off just some unbelievable moves out there. Driving for JR Motorsports in relief of Michael Lynette, the number 1 car. Great performance that he put out there. I think that move down the back straightaway was probably the move of the entire weekend. Looked like it was going to work out. I know Junior was constantly downplaying him during the broadcast, and I guess perhaps surprisingly objective. Really, almost to a fault, I guess, at this point. The opposite of Jeff Gordon cheering on the Hendrick cars every time he was in the booth. But Junior really downplaying his performance, and ultimately Barry did not pull off the win, but certainly turned heads as he has continued to do all this season. And after the news, of course, of him now being in the Xfinity Series full-time next year, certainly fantastic news with him. So you can certainly understand why he's been up there. On top of the fact that, of course, he's won Martinsville. Now he's been trying to get the Rackley War effort going and the Truck Series effort. A lot of good positives to see from Josh Berry, and hopefully we see much more of it in the near future. So that's going to be really exciting to see. I hope it also encourages these teams really to look at these late model drivers to try to get some of these kids in there. Guys like Carl Long in the past that have worked their way in there and maybe taking a look at what their driver development programs actually do bring in. Barry has really kind of set the world on fire this year, and it's been really impressive to see, and I'd love to see more of it. And so kudos to Junior and to Kelly and the folks over at JR Motorsports for bringing this guy on board, and it's going to be some interesting races, I think, to see. We're going to see the beginnings of something that we've already seen with teams like Colleague Racing, where they've been able to develop talent and even bring back talent that has struggled in the past. Of course, AJ Allmendinger, ultimately the winner of that race, as well as last week's Cup Series race at Indianapolis. They've certainly hit the ground running. Check out Ben Schneider's article that he wrote for Nascar this past week. I thought did a great job of breaking down just how quickly and how much that team and driver have really kind of taken off this year. It really kind of surprises you. Just not even that long ago, I remember writing the article about Blake Cook finishing last in a leaf filter car at Atlanta. It was just kind of an also ran with TriStar Motorsports. And now all of a sudden you not only start a new team with one car, then you expand it to multiple cars and you actually improve on that. It's really astounding. And of course, they're going to be ones to watch next week as well in the Xfinity race because you talk about a race where they go trophy hunting. If it's not a road course, these super speedways, they're right up there. And Justin Haley in particular, it's hard to pick out one. You had what? I mean, Jeb Burton won the Talladega race, rain shortened though it was. Allmendinger is always up there, and then of course Haley. Whoever takes the win on Friday night, they're gonna have to take it from one of them, absent any of those accidents that we too often see the super speedways here. Let's see. Looking at anything else from the Xfinity race here. Tommy Joe Martin's good to see him get a lot of screen time during the race. Ends up finishing in the 19th spot there at the end of the day. Tyler Reddick in the 16th spot for our Motorsports, one spot behind Jordan Anderson. Anderson finally getting a good run in his own Xfinity car. Actually, one spot right behind Matt Mills. We talk about Jay Buford. Then really the rest of there is pretty much drivers you would expect to be up there, at least in recent years. So that would certainly be the case. Colin Garrett with the 20th place finish. Ryan Vargas in 21st. David Starr, 22nd. Kyle Weatherman in 24th. Colby Howard, 25th. Landon Castle, 26th. Again, kind of drivers that, traditionally you would see around that area, but it's good to see them further from 30th place and kind of closer to the lead pack battle. The accident on the backstretch certainly played a role in that, but at the same time, you actually had a pretty competitive group of drivers there. All righty. So we'll get into the Truck Series race here in just a moment. All righty. So back to Friday night, and it turned out to be quite a long night. I ended up posting the article for that one on Saturday just because that power outage that happened on lap 62 ended up taking so much longer than I was already expecting there. So, but Jennifer Jo Cobb, ultimately your last place finisher, and actually her first of the season, which means we now have 16 last place finishers in 16 Truck Series races. And by finishing last with her bottom 5 and bottom 10 tally, she actually now takes the lead in the Nascar Truck Series Championship on a bottom 15 tiebreaker. So with this extremely close competition there, her and Norm Benning now topping the charts there with the same number of bottom 5s and bottom 10s. But now Jennifer Jo Cobb now taking the lead in that championship as we now enter the playoffs now. Going to be interesting to see how that shakes out in these final few races here. Sheldon Creed, your winner, one of only 3 race leaders in the event, utterly dominated the race at Gateway on Friday, power outage or none. The other competitors further back in the lineup, Carson Hocevar, very impressive after suffering that left front damage to his truck. Still getting a 8th place finish there for him. Jack Wood with, I believe, his first top 10 finish there in GMS Racing's number 24. Tyler Hill, just on the outside of the top 10. I believe that's now his 3rd 11th place finish in the number 56 Hair Club Chevrolet there. So great run for them. It's unfortunate that they don't have the driver and team audio at these standalone events because a lot of these events, like Gateway, actually bring in a lot of new competitors. We saw competitors like Armani Williams make his first Truck Series start over the weekend. Other competitors getting back into the circuit. Jake Griffin making a rare pavement start. We usually see him run the dirt tracks. Unfortunately, Griffin ended up in the bottom 5. Jordan Anderson, Danny Bones, Zane Smith, and Jake Griffin, your bottom 5 in this particular event. Grant Enfinger, once again, can't buy a break. Seems like every time he's in the 9 truck, he has some kind of a problem, whether it was mechanical issues he had late in the going at Pocono, or in this case with the hood flapping up at Gateway, dropping him back into the 25th spot at the finish, right behind Roger Roos. Corey Roper with a complete lack of sponsorship on his truck, actually having white numbers on a white truck, which a lot of people rightly were wondering if that was even allowed. But traditionally, he's run with several sponsors on his truck, or at least ones for his partial schedule. And the near winner at Daytona not too long ago, coming down to finish in the 17th position there in his unsponsored truck. I believe the 3rd highest finishing Ford in the lineup. Josh Berry, again, at the start of his triple header weekend, finishing in the 15th spot for the Rackley War effort. Tate Fogelman in 14th, solid run for him, finishing ahead of his teammate Spencer Boyd, but I believe was he behind the 0-2? I think he was ahead of the 0-2. Yeah, Chris Wright, the 18th spot there, was behind him as well. Good to see Stewart Friesen finish with all 4 fenders on the number 52, finishing in the 4th spot there. Not going to, unfortunately, the series not going to his home track there in Mosport, second straight year. That event's now been taken off the schedule, and the Truck Series will return in a couple weeks as part of Darlington's weekend, as it had last year. But now this year, it's the second race that they've had at Darlington in the Truck Series. And, of course, much like Gateway, had a very big pile up during the spring race there, hopefully a little bit cleaner of a race there, and you get some good competition at one of the series' best tracks out there. Certainly for sure. The freaky accident that you had during the Truck Series race was certainly the one where John Hunter Nemechek's truck unexpectedly shut down in turn 1, and everybody piled into it, including Jake Griffin, who was turned by another truck further back in the pack. It's lucky that a second pileup didn't start from the back markers back there, but eliminated several contenders, none of those, of course, being Sheldon Creed, who then ended up taking the victory and punching his ticket to the next round of the playoffs in the first step of his own title defense. Chris Hacker finishing in 27th spot. He was running in last for a lot of this event. Chandler Smith competing for it as well. Jennifer Jo Cobb ended up taking the spot there after the power outage, and the race resumed. Both of them returning to the race and passing several drivers who were eliminated in accidents. But Cobb not returning after that, and ultimately falling out after completing 28 laps. Kudos. I had a person actually contact me from Jennifer Jo Cobb's team and says that actually that team has multiple Fords in their lineup, not just one Thor Sport entry. So let me make sure I get the actual message here so I quote this properly. The 10-team situation, they have 2 Ford trucks. One of them is called Sandy, which is a Thor Sport chassis, which has the fastener supply scheme. And Sharon K is another truck that's one of her workhorses. This was a rebodied Ford after the DNQ at Coda, where the truck was wrecked. So there are 2 Fords now in the lineup there for the actual lineup there. Jennifer Jo Cobb Racing. Hopefully things turn around for that program. Obviously, the manufacturer switched from Chevrolet to Ford being one thing they're working with, but even qualifying for races at the same time. She's qualified for many more races this year than she has last year. Norm Benning has again been one of the ones that was really been struggling with that. And this certainly brings us to our next subject from that weekend. Speaking of noses, can you believe what happened with Norm Benning, where he was now told after he unloaded the truck at Gateway that he did not have the current nose on his truck? That was a 2018 nose, which as of June 30th, NASCAR prohibited at every track except the road courses and the dirt tracks. Now, there's some question now based on the statement that was released from Norm Benning's team as to whether or not Norm was aware of this change or that this particular truck was approved to run at the Oval or not. It sounded like that there was a conversation from the actual quote from Benning's team with NASCAR that the truck that they brought, he could bring it again to Gateway, and so they rightly did so. Now he's now surprised that this now news comes out and he can't enter the truck in the race. And of course, this also brings in the situation where we don't have qualifying this year. And Clay Greenfield, who would have been in the field if just one team wasn't entered in the race, ends up still missing a race and not being able to start a single race this season, as well as On Point Motorsports was going to enter a second truck, which is going to have Chris Hacker in it before Hacker picked up the ride with the Realm brothers. Both those teams ostensibly kept out of the field there in a 38 truck field, taking the green flag. It's just bad on all fronts there. It's terrible for Norm Benning. It's terrible for Clay Greenfield. Ironically, the two combatants that were bouncing off each other at Eldora back in 2013, both affected by this, and even On Point Motorsports being eliminated from this. You can only say at this point, with NASCAR and the teams budgeting things as how it is with lack of qualifying, we can only wait till next year, of course, for them to bring back practice and qualifying. But again, you have this situation here with the nose on the truck for Norm's effort there, and they don't have a fabricator on the staff that they get their noses fixed in Charlotte, and ultimately misses the race. I hate it for him. I mean, this on top of a year where again we did that video posted on this channel just a while back about the fact that his truck was his personal truck was stolen back in Kansas and they were stranded at the Speedway. It's certainly been, to say the least, a year to forget for Benning. Hopefully he can finish it strong here in these last couple of races and have something closer to the night he had at Knoxville, where he was involved in that accident there at the end of the race and still had to get a decent finish. Ultimately, getting that decent finish was part of the bottom 15 tiebreaker with Jennifer Jo Cobb that now puts Cobb in the lead in the last car standings for this season in the Truck Series. But an unfortunate situation there for Norm. Hopefully things kind of bounce back there for him. So too bad with him on that. And you just hate to see it. I mean, I think there gets to a point, I think, in this sport, it's very easy where, somebody can kind of fall behind and then just have something else happen that drops them further back. And again, you can't minimize the expense. Norm's team is based out of Pennsylvania, and to commute all that way to Missouri, to St. Louis for this race, and then not even, they already paid for tires and the entry fee and all that, and not to mention the expense of, reserving hotels and driving down there. And now all of a sudden, you don't get to even start the race and make some of that back. It's awful, but again, it's, hopefully something gets worked out there. I would hope that they're getting a new nose worked on that. I haven't heard anything new on that from Norm, because of course we got other ovals coming up in this rest of the schedule, starting with even Darlington. Luckily they have an extra off weekend there to get something worked out there. But hopefully we'll see Norm back at Darlington and in the next stretch of races coming up here. So again, a difficult week for some of these underdogs here in the different sports. Alrighty. Let's see here. So let's see. Anything else from the Truck Series race there? Haley Deegan, the 7th spot. I saw a comment about that too. Definitely have to mention that as well. Good finish for her on that after starting 19th in the lineup there. The top finishing Ford, in fact, in the field. Really was kind of interested to see the Taylor and Tanner Gray battle going on there. Unfortunately, Tanner got involved in an accident there towards the end of the race, dropping in the 19th spot there, where they were both looking to compete for top 10s. Again, when you have a race like that where you have a wreck among the leaders, it really opens up, of course, some opportunity for some unfamiliar faces up there. And even with Creed having this race pretty well in hand, it was good to see other competitors really trying to kind of work their way back up there. It was still the broadcast in general for the truck race was pretty disappointing. We never really got a firm grip onto what exactly happened with Derek Griffith out there in his debut with the KBM team. Backed into the wall at some point. Don't know if he was collected by somebody else or whatever, but ends up dropped back into the 26th spot there at the finish for him. But again, Jennifer Jo Cobb, your last place finisher for the Truck Series race here. Okay. So, again, you got any other questions here? In the meantime, you got hit by Taylor Gray. Did Taylor Gray take out Tanner? Was that the situation? It's pretty, I mean, that'd be even worse. But I know there was something going on there at the same time, but that's awful to see at the same situation there. Again, if they're just, they're that hard-headed, they're going to do a Kurt Busch and Kyle Busch at the 2007 All-Star race, then that'd be another thing to kind of look at. All righty. Taylor took out Griffith? Okay. You mean Jake Griffin? That was one further back. I thought it was a Ford. I couldn't really make out which truck that was there. But at any rate there. Okay. So we'll go ahead and jump into our trivia segment here. I think that's pretty much most of the highs and lows from this past weekend. If you guys have any other questions about the action this week or anything else that's going on here in the background, don't hesitate to let me know. We'll talk about that as well. A couple of updates here on a couple of projects I'm working on. I have received another script from NASCAR Man this week, so I'm going to see if I can actually record it after the show here tonight and get that rolling on here. I do have I have also some more work completed on Rise of the Field Fillers, episode 9. I believe it's episode 9, or is it episode 8? I know it's been a long wait here either way. I think it's episode 8, the Andy Belmont episode. Almost done with editing the transcription from that and kind of putting a script together for that. So I hope to get some more work done on that through the rest of this month and hopefully get an episode going before the Las Vegas trip coming up at the end of September, which will be the next time we actually do some trackside coverage here. Again, pending credentials on that, still waiting to hear back on that as well. So fingers crossed on that regard. So still getting that worked out. What I'm also looking into at the same time is trying to come up with some shorter videos. If I knew it was going to take a couple of months here to get this Andy Belmont episode done, I would have planned this out a lot better. But I'm looking to kind of get some other shorter videos up here to kind of post in the meantime. I know the last couple of videos I've had have just been audio only, and I don't want to get in really a habit of that. Those two just kind of worked out in such a way that it wasn't really necessary to put in graphics with those. But something else that has more of a visual component to it to kind of fill the gap here in the meantime. One thing I always end up finding myself doing in a lot of these videos anymore is that, you just kind of want to go on and on with the research. And you just want to get everything. And, you kind of look at all these different sources and just, it's really satisfying, I think, for me personally, kind of cobble a lot of this information together. And what may start out as like, oh, let's probably be like a 5-minute video or a 10-minute video. Suddenly it's like 45 minutes or an hour. So I think the good news is once we get the Belmont episode out, and this other project that I've also been putting together since June, which I have planned in October, that should kind of clear the pipes quite a bit here and hopefully get some more episodes here. Not only of Rise of the Field Fillers, but also some shorter videos here too. And then I also want to kind of revamp some of the content here in the Patreon, which is of course at patreon.com/LastCar on Brock. And get some more content up there. Of course, for the $5 and up members, they already get advanced access to videos that I already produce and post on YouTube. But I also want to get some more exclusive content on there. And I've been kind of brushing some ideas together to get that up there too. So look forward to that. Obviously been a crazy past while here. But again, a lot of that's still in the works. And we'll hopefully have some more updates on that for you guys here pretty soon. Yep, NASCAR Man content for sure. Oh yeah, there's more to go. We do have a show and tell this week. No tires, just gas. Just a little one here this week, so we'll jump into that too. I'm gonna also have everybody pick their category for the trivia tonight while I do that. So again, the categories, if you're new here, welcome. The categories are on this late 90s Trivial Pursuit thing: NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. So whichever category you want, go ahead and mention it in the comments. Beast of Metal, if you're able to still keep tally of that, that would be fantastic. I do appreciate when you do that. So whichever category you'd like, whichever one gets the most votes, we'll start with that one, and we'll do a few questions to wrap up this evening. So a little something different here for the well, I mean, maybe not that different for the show and tell tonight. I want to talk again about the diecast that's been produced over the years by racing champions and so forth here. I've shown some older ones here on the show here before, and this one's a bit more recent. We're going to turn back the clock to 1998, and back when Pilot Travel Centers sponsored a completely different team from the one that Josh Berry raced and very nearly won with on Saturday in the Xfinity Series. Gary Bradbury driving the number 78 Pilot Travel Centers car. Imagine a time where nowadays you can still pretty much get diecast either custom made or a lot of them get made by Lionel. Imagine back in a time where they would actually have these in stores and you would actually be able to find a driver that never won a race and only ran a partial schedule in 1998 driving the number 78 car here. And always kind of an interesting paint scheme that stands out. It is indeed on the Ford Taurus there. I really like how this one kind of came out. And the artistic liberties that were taken with the cars back then, the body template of these Tauruses is very different from the way it would actually look on a broadcast. Nowadays, I think things come out like much more proportionate, but this is almost looks like more like the way I used to draw these back in my sketchbooks back in the day. But I always really thought this was a neat paint scheme that they ran here. Kind of a different look at it here on the number 78. I was just watching earlier this week. Somebody posted a video of Bradbury actually scoring a pretty dominant win at Winchester. I think it was Winchester in the ARCA series, and that was what was kind of reminding me of this as well. That he dominated pretty much that event back in, I think it was 93, 94, thereabouts, and running the number 78, if I'm not mistaken. But this time around, ran just a couple of Cup Series races. He also drove for TriStar Motorsports in 97. Child Support Recovery Machine, the number 19 that used to be driven by Loy Allen years before. But always really pleased to see that, a lot of these were made, even drivers and teams that don't really get talked about that often. And Bradbury did make a few races back when you actually, well, of course, another benefit of qualifying, you could have a team like this that maybe doesn't make that many starts and not only qualifies for a race, but qualifies really well. If memory serves, I think it was at Texas or Atlanta. It was one of the quad ovals. He actually qualified near the top 10 there and had a good start. So again, what's great again is that there's a lot of these. I think the diecast market is kind of getting back to this where there's some, teams. I mean, Jennifer Jo Cobb, we just talked about. She just recently got her own diecast made on 64 scale. I'm still waiting for Norm Benning to get his made. But back then you would still be able to have a guy like Gary Bradbury on there. And so definitely giving him a shout out here on the show here tonight for sure. Oh, yeah, the 19 diecast. There you go. Yeah, it would be like Matt Mills' 55 car being made. Exactly. Yeah. Having a guy maybe have one or two starts. It would be great if somebody actually had I'm waiting to see if they're actually going to make diecast of Derek Cope's Daytona 500 car. Yeah, it finished in last place. And yeah, it was unfortunate how that played out. But I would have to say I would have a hard time not pulling the trigger on that if that happened. But we'll find out on that end. Poll's still open for now. Thank you, Beast of Metal. We got drivers and tracks tied for 3. Okay, we'll give it just a moment here more, and we'll do some more with some trivia questions in the meantime. I'm trying to think of other things to show for show and tell here that would be a good subject. I might have something. Let's see. I have something set up for Daytona next week that should be pretty good. And I also have something else that I'm actually waiting for in the mail that a friend of mine was sending. So I'm hoping we'll see what that looks like there too. But I think that would make for a good show and tell segment too. So I know I haven't done this the last couple of weeks, so I'm looking to kind of get back into that too. That's been with this entire week. I mean, gosh, just watching the news already. It's been crazy enough as is. I'm sure I'm positive nobody that's involved in this is watching this, but I definitely have to say, thoughts certainly to those victims of the Calder fire northeast of us. Actually, you may hear in the background during the show the sound of helicopters going back and forth. That is from our local airport because they have a very serious forest fire taking place out there. And certainly our firefighters at CAL FIRE and everybody working very hard on that out there. So, certainly, hoping for the best and hoping for quick containment of that there too. I know it's been crazy there. And, goodness, it's been a whole situation with that. Right now, we're safe. We're good here for now, but we're staying vigilant here at the same time because it's been, fire season up here is certainly no joke. So that's what we're looking at here at the moment. But again, there's, we're doing okay, but there's people not far from us who absolutely are not, and that's been a bit challenging this week here for sure. So but everybody's working hard on that, and hopefully quick containment on that here as well. So let's see. Go drivers to break the tie. Okay, certainly. Okay, good. We got that there. That's good to see. So we'll do some driver questions here. Looks like. Thank you again, Beast of Metal, for keeping the records there. We'll do driver questions here. All righty. So, first question of the evening. What driver won the most money in 1972 but did not win the championship? And look it up. Try to guess there. What driver won the most money in 1972 but did not win the championship? I wish there was a Hideo Fukuyama diecast. Oh, yeah. Me too. Were you the one that tweeted that earlier this week? We had the picture of the standing together car, the blue car. Like, that would be great. He had some great paint schemes. He's actually very active on Facebook, too. I think he was actually part of the Japanese broadcast for the 24 Hours of Le Mans over the weekend here. I just watched a little bit of that, too. I like endurance racing. I like it a lot. I just haven't really followed it as closely and everything. But it's kudos to Chad Knaus going out there and seeing it. I think his tweets have been pretty entertaining on that. What driver won the most money in 1972 but did not win the championship? Remember when they used to keep track of the money that these teams were earning? Yeah, it's a little bit different than that now. Okay, I guess it's for Cale Yarborough. The pace car. Yeah, that's a good one there. Bobby Allison. Glotzback, Pearson, Bobby Allison, Beast Metal, not quite. Pearson, okay. What driver won the most money in 1972 but did not win the championship? And the answer is indeed Bobby Allison. Bobby Allison did not win the championship until 1983. Yeah, it wasn't that long ago they stopped releasing purses. Yeah, that's been too bad. Bobby Allison is the correct answer. Who was the first to that? NASCAR fan 6056. I think you were the first one on that one. So kudos to you. Yeah, good guesses all around, though. Pearson, Darrell Waltrip, Glotzback. Yeah, there you go. 2015. It was like part of the. I think the thing with the purse winnings was part of the whole deal with the charter system coming in there, because it seemed like that happened at the same time. That's another thing I've never really liked with the charter system, is it slid in a lot of these other rules and they just kind of became part of it. So maybe people would agree with one part of it and then all these other things would come with it. And all of a sudden you'd look around and be like, wait a minute, why is this different? I just think that's just a slimy way to go about things, but hopefully something gets changed on that. Okay, here we go. Next question. Which driver from Bogalusa became the 1976 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? So look it up. What driver from Bogalusa, Bogalusa, became the 1976 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? Bogalusa. There's a name. Yeah, about the same time they stopped reporting race attendance. Yeah, there you go. What driver from Bogalusa became the 1976 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? Is the question. Bob Pockrass? Yeah, not quite. All right. Alrighty. Tyler Head on Twitter just tweeting, there's only 3 more 550 races left this season. Do with that information what you will. It's like Vegas, Texas, and Kansas. That's what he posted there. Well, hey, we'll be at one of those. I don't know. I guess we haven't. Well, no, we did a 550 race. We did Texas. Yeah, we did. We have seen what that looks like in person. It's different. Well, the All-Star race is different in itself. I mean, having the shorter fields is a big part of that. Definitely got to say, it was really strange what, going into the see the drivers after the open race. And you kind of, I'm so used to going into a garage area after a really long race. The cars are all beat up and the drivers are exhausted. But in that one, I mean, certainly the heat made it, the drivers were still exhausted, but the cars were like almost perfectly intact, not even dirty after like 30 laps, except for Suarez and Jones who had that one wreck. But yeah. What driver from Bogalusa became the 1976 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? And the answer is Skip Manning. Skip Manning. I believe he drove the 92 before Terry Labonte. Maserati 9, you were all over it. Yeah, they wrote the charter system like legislation in Congress. Exactly. Yeah, ready. Okay, let's see here. Ooh, this is a timely one. Here we go. So this is, again, keep in mind this is as of the late 90s here. The question is, who is the only driver to win the Indy 500, Daytona 500, and the 24 Hours of Le Mans? So there we go. We got a Le Mans question. Perfect. Who is the only driver to win the Indy 500, Daytona 500, and the 24 Hours of Le Mans? Okay, we got guesses for AJ Foyt. We got Mario Andretti. Both good guesses. Do we have any other guesses here? It's like a lot of Foyts and Andretti's here. Who is the only driver to win the Indy 500, Daytona 500, and the 24 Hours of Le Mans? Welcome back here, GP Laps. And the answer is indeed AJ Foyt. AJ Foyt, GP, you got that one. As did Maserati 9. He came in afterwards. Charles Peterson Jr., Sedhead 2, Danamon, and so forth. There you go. I guess these questions get a little bit too easy. Oh, hang on. All right, next question. What driver ended 1991 195 points behind Dale Earnhardt? What driver ended 1991 195 points behind Dale Earnhardt? All right, I guess it's for Ricky Rudd, Harry Gant, Mark Martin, Ricky Rudd, Rusty Wallace, Charles Peterson, Bodine, Rusty. All right, what driver ended 1991 195 points behind Dale Earnhardt? The answer is Ricky Rudd. Ricky Rudd, indeed, the Tide Ride. One of his best championship efforts besides 2001 against Jeff Gordon. Ricky Rudd, Beast of Metal. Looks like you were first on that one. Said Head 2 right afterwards. Yeah, Rusty's not a bad guess. That was Rusty's first season with Roger Penske, first full season. So you had that. Here we go. Here's a good one for Daytona questions. What driver dominated Speed Weeks in 1962 by winning every single race he entered? What driver dominated Speed Weeks in 1962 by winning every single race he entered? All righty. I guess this is for Fireball Roberts, Tiny Lund, Richard Petty, Rex White, Lee Petty. Party Hard by Andrew WK plays. Yeah, right on. All right. Let's see. Last time by here. What driver dominated Speed Weeks in 1962 by winning every single race he entered? All right. So again, here we got Fireball Roberts, Lund, Petty. Okay, we think we'll get the answer here. The answer is indeed Fireball Roberts. Glenn Fireball Roberts is the correct answer. And yep, Maserati 9. You were the first on that one, just ahead of Zachary Leffler. Yep. If you can hear it, that's a helicopter in the background there. Yeah. Fireball Roberts is indeed the correct answer on that one. All righty. Here we go. Exactly. Okay. Next question here. What driver from Virginia was the 1973 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? What driver from Virginia was the 1973 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? There you go. And while you're debating that, I'm going to step away for just a moment here. I'll be right back. So this little guy was making a lot of noise in the background. I'm sure you could hear. This is Frankie. Frankie is my dad's dog here, and he he does not like to be left alone. So I don't know what he's looking at. He usually doesn't get let in here too, so this is a little bit of a treat. So we'll have him up here for a little bit. There you go. There you go. You never know what shows up on the show here. So I was going to bring one of our other ones up here, but I think he's still outside. So we'll have Frankie take center stage here today. There you go. Unfortunately, he's had his teeth taken out, so that's where the tongue is there. But other than that, he still manages to go through the dry food pretty well. So there you go. All right. Okay. So let me get the question here. What driver from Virginia was the 1973 NASCAR Winston Cup Rookie of the Year? The answer is indeed, it misspelled it. Lenny Pond. It spelled it with a Y instead of an IE. It's kind of weird. Lenny Pond. Oh, it looks like, okay, a few of you got that one. Ned Jarrett. Oh, no, this was from earlier. Let's see. Larry Smith. Lenny Pond. I think Maserati 9. Looks like he might have been the first one on that one. There you go. Wyatt O'Quinn. Yeah, so there you go. Oh, come on. What are you looking at? What are you looking at? There you go. There you go. You want to sit down? Want to sit down? Or you just want to you want to sit like that? Okay, you can if you want. There you go. I know I'm spoiling him too much here. Now he's going to be pawing at the door and trying to get in here. There you go. All righty. So we'll do maybe just a couple more questions here and wrap up here for tonight. All right. Ooh, here we go. Here's a good one. What NASCAR Winston Cup driver was 1980 late model sportsman rookie of the year? What NASCAR Winston Cup driver was 1980 late model sportsman rookie of the year? He does look comfy, doesn't he? There you go. Chihuahuas are always great lap dogs. I mean, well, we got some new puppies recently, and they would, if I brought them up here, they would just be running all over the place. Like that would be marking plenty of territory, and that's not Frankie style. What NASCAR Winston Cup driver was 1980 late model sportsman rookie of the year? All right, got questions from Mark Martin, Harry Gant, Terry Labonte, Jimmy Spencer, Morgan Shepherd. Wow, okay, we got a good spread here. Ken Bouchard, Frankie. Oh my goodness. I think we had the show at Indy. I think it was last August where I was in the room with the cat. So we've had a couple pets on the show here. Not too much of it. Maybe we'll do some more. Oh, you want to sit down? Yeah, you good? You're good. I hope you start to wriggle a little bit. Yeah, we'll probably wrap up here for you a little bit. Here we go. All right, what NASCAR Winston Cup driver was 1980 late model sportsman rookie of the year? The answer is Derek Cope. Well, I kind of should have known that one. Derek Cope. I guess it was talking about which series. Let me read that again. What NASCAR Winston Cup driver was 1980 late model sportsman rookie of the year? I guess it doesn't specify what region or whatever. Yeah, it says Derek Cope. Yeah. That sounds familiar. I know he had a track championship around that era, but I wouldn't. Okay. Well, I guess I got another thing I got to ask him about. Okay. Well, there's one too. Yeah, I thought he ran in Winston West then. Well, yeah, he did, but that's the other thing. Okay. Wow, I don't think anybody got that one. All right, take it easy, Alexander. Yeah, I don't think anybody had that other bingo card. Oh, so here we go. There you go. Oh, you're gonna sit down. There you go. There you go. There you go. Oh, give me that look. Don't you give me that look? Oh, come on. Okay. Oh, there we go. Now he's cozy. I'm gonna bring him downstairs for the folks worry about where he is. Okay. Last question of the night here. Who was the only active driver in? Oh, let me move it over here. Who was the only active driver in 1998 with more than 30 years of experience? Who was the only active driver in 1998 with more than 30 years of experience? Take care, Wyatt. Yeah, good boy. Who? There we go. Trying not to block the dog. Who is the only active driver in 1998 with more than 30 years of experience? All right. Marcus, Morgan Shepherd, Ricky Rudd, Kyle Busch, Darrell Waltrip. Okay. There you go. Okay. Okay. There you are. How old is Frankie? I think he's 14, I want to say. I'm trying to remember. I don't remember his exact birth year. I'd have to check on that. I want to say 14. He's not. He is a bit of an older one. He's an older puppy. But he definitely acts young, though. He's not as harder to control as our newest ones, but he's yeah. He's a good lap dog, though. Who is the only active driver in 1998 with more than 30 years of experience? It's our last question for tonight here. Got to count the rings. Yeah, there you go. Marcus and Morgan Shepherd and Waltrip and so on. Okay, here we go. And the answer is Dave Marcus. So a lot of you got that one correct. Dave Marcus is indeed the correct answer. Jetman999, it looks like you were the first one on that one. So kudos to you, Beast of Metal, and others jumped on that. Just make sure I'm not here. The folks wonder where the dog is. Okay. Alrighty. So that will do it for the show here tonight. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. And I know that Frankie was happy to meet a lot of you here too. So Frankie, you can check out the chat there too. So there we go. All right, buddy. All right. So I'm going to bring him back downstairs, but I will see you guys next week. Next Saturday night, if the rain does not come in, hopefully it holds off here. We're going to have a review of the Daytona action for both the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series. In the meantime, check out the website, lastcar.info, the Twitter at LastCarOnBrock, and the Patreon, patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock. And again, our next show will be next Saturday night, a late night show, pending, of course, weather. Whenever the Cup Series race concludes, that will be our show. About 15 minutes after the checkered flag. So have a great week, everyone, and we'll see you next time.